Never let it rest. Until you're good as you're better. All right, first rule of broadcasting: never experiment while you on the air. Good God Almighty, family! I want to welcome you to GNJMedia. This is the beginning of the Kemetic New Year, and we are blessed today to have Dr. Riba, Kelsey, and she will be talking with us about being healthy, wealthy, and wise. I want to make sure that everybody out there can hear. So if the sound is not coming through, y'all need to let a brother know. All right. And without any further ado, matter of fact, I do got one more. I got a commercial I want to play. Give her a little bit of time, give her a little bit more time. So she gonna take your breaths, Reba, take your breaths. Let's do this real quick. We're gonna do this commercial. Wow, let's get it. You know I'm live, right? I'm live. What's going on?
I'm going to something. I'm not getting to the website. I see you on Facebook. That's
Well,
what
go
I
to
got on.
Facebook. Go to Facebook then. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm gonna do that. But anybody else, when they go to
they
GNJMedia.live,
should
they're
see it.
going.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. You know I'm on air right now.
Yeah,
I'm Mama Lona. I'm on air right now.
got it. Gone.
All right. Oh man, I didn't even turn off my mic. Lord have mercy. Can you hear me, Reba?
I can hear you.
Oh my God. So could everybody else. Oh Lord, I'm so embarrassed.
That's all right.
So, family, we are sitting here with Dr. Riba Kelsey. She is straight from the Columbus community. She was born, I think she was born and raised in Columbus. She graduated from a Columbus high school and she went to college. And now she's a doctor and she's here to address the family. So, I'm going to get out the way and I'm going to leave it to Dr. Riba and I'm going to try to figure out what's going on with GNJMedia.live.
All right. Thank you, Brother Hatem. All right, Hotep family, and I would be remiss if I didn't start by asking for permission from the elders to speak. And if anyone can type their permission in the chat, I would appreciate that. If not, I'll pause just for a minute and try to feel your vibrations and hope that that you are giving that permission and that you will be pleased with the words that I will bring to the family. So, and I'll just pause just for a minute for that. All right. So now I would like to thank the Tawi Family Village for inviting me to spend this time with you. To my parents, Mariba and Niambi Kelsey, thank you for your continuous guidance and example. Thank you for helping me to know who I am from the earliest messages that you gave, including that I am a great African, that I am a genius, that the creator is in me, and that our community needs scientists, which is what set me on my life's path. So I also want to thank the elders of Tawi, of the Tawi village. And I would like for you to know that I give thanks for you daily, as along with my parents, you raised me. When I left Columbus 31 years ago, I carried with me a solid African foundation that each of you played a role in establishing. So please know that although I have carried you with it, although I've been away from Columbus, that I have carried you with me through the years and in my work. And when I remind my students and my residents who I teach that the truth is always enough, and that demonstration of good character is as important, if not more than important, than the medical care we provide. Those are lessons that you taught me and that you demonstrated for me. So your work extends far beyond what you may know. Now, I don't think that I knew when I left Columbus that I wouldn't return there to live. So I'm also grateful to you, Brother Hatem, who came to Columbus around the time that I was leaving, I think. And so I thank you for your continued work in Columbus and for continuing to build there. So it's really indeed an honor. And I'm humbled by the opportunity to share a few thoughts with all of you. Our topic for this afternoon is being healthy, wealthy, and wise. And as I understand it, the topic was generated with my father's book, Being Healthy and Wealthy, a process for African people's transition for growth and development in mind. So I will draw a few principles from his book as I walk us through a discussion of health in our community. And then I will also give a few ideas on maintaining health and wellness and some considerations for individual and community approaches to our wellness. So what is the current state of our health, of the health in our community? Well, the good news is that over the past 17 years or so, the death rate among Africans in America has decreased by about 25%, and the life expectancy has increased slightly. However, there is some concerning news. And that is that our people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are now living with and dying from diseases that are typically found, had typically been found in persons who are much older. And certainly there are diseases that that whites in America have are diagnosed with and die of at older ages. So this is true for chronic diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, and several types of cancer. First-time strokes also are occurring at about 2 times the rate as they're occurring among whites, and the death rate for stroke is also higher. For cancer diagnosis rates and death rates are higher for prostate as well as for cervical cancer. And although the diagnosis rates for breast cancer are slightly higher among white women compared to Black women, the breast cancer related deaths are 40% higher among African American women. Rates of new diagnoses and deaths for lung cancer are about the same in both whites and Blacks. However, the death rates, the diagnoses are about the same, but the death rates are certainly higher. So we also, many of us are aware and probably have seen in the news and in the media the concern around maternal mortality rates, which are significantly higher among African women in America as compared to white women. And we know, for example, that even among college-educated Black women, in the past they thought that this had something to do with educational level or perhaps economics or something of that nature. But we're finding that even among college-educated Black women, that we are 5.2 times more likely to experience maternal mortality than whites who are college-educated. So these are all significant concerns for us. As we, kind of go down the list, we think about mental health, where although the diagnosis rates of mental illness are higher among whites, that among African Americans, we find that diagnosis, particularly for depression and anxiety, once diagnosed, they persist longer, and that the rates of disability related to mental illness or mental health disorders is greater among us. So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of issues around our health. Again, just kind of in summary, we know that diabetes, heart disease, cancer, maternal and child health is an issue. We know death rates are a concern. And then obesity, which is kind of at the core of some of these, the reasons that we see some of these increases, is a significant concern with higher rates among us than in other groups. So, it's not just the name of the disease state that is a concern, but it's what it does inside of our bodies, affecting, whether we're talking about our kidneys, our eyesight, the nerves in our, which results sometimes in amputation in cases of diabetes, for example, the heart. So the vasculature that goes to all of those areas is affected. And so, that is a significant concern regarding the health in our community. So, why is this? Why is this? There's some that may argue that there's a genetic element at play. And while there may be some case for that in some instances, if it could explain it completely, we would expect to see similar rates of these diseases among our people throughout the diaspora. We know that that is not the case for all of these diseases. In fact, we find that in some of these instances, we note the exact opposite. In fact, very low rates of some of them. So, so there are other reasons, obviously, that this is occurring. Now, there is one concept that has actually been researched and published that may explain this difference. It's called weathering, and it was studied primarily related to and looking at maternal mortality, but we're seeing that it likely is related to some of these other chronic diseases. And what weathering is the idea that through the racism, systemic racism, oppression, the stress related to all of that it increases at baseline the stress burden that increases some of the stress hormones in the body that then negatively impacts health. And like I said, that was found most significantly so among women who were with child and immediately after during and immediately after delivery, but it is also showing to be the case in some other disease states. So remember that if you've not read about it, it may be worth doing some reading on the concept of weathering. Now, secondly, we understand, as our ancestors understood, that the mind, the body, and the spirit are connected. So the mental and spiritual dis-ease that we experience as a people due to our disconnectedness from each other and from our traditional spiritual systems and values is a major contributor to the physical manifestations that we see play out as hypertension, diabetes, stroke, and the like. With that said, it is not surprising that we are also seeing diseases occurring at younger ages as our young people become further and further removed from our way, whether it be through the media or other influences that would have them to believe that assimilation into American culture is the path to success, or is the path to acceptance, or is the path to a better life in this country. We know that that we become sicker and sicker. So this ties directly into some of the instructions that are provided in Being Healthy and Wealthy, which discusses the importance of the infant understanding his or her connectedness to the family and to the extended family, the young child understanding that this connectedness extends to all African people, the Creator, and to nature, and older children and adults understanding their connectedness with the same and to the ancestors and to the yet unborn. So with increasing responsibility to that connection at each stage of life, we understand also that we all play a responsibility in helping each other at each of those stages of life to better understand what that connection means and to better understand and fulfill those responsibilities at each of those stages. So this is a natural progression for us, which when it's out of sync, creates disturbances of all sorts. And so that's where we then see diseases occur at greater rates. So that disconnectedness or that disturbance or that being out of sync with our natural way can occur either on a conscious level or on a subconscious level. And when it's happening on a subconscious level, or when it's happening even on a conscious level and we're not doing anything to address it, that's where the greatest degree of morbidity, which is sickness, and mortality, which is death, is likely to occur. Now, I guess another great African thinker discussed this idea related to the African self-consciousness, and Dr. Kobe Kamban talked about that in the importance of the young child understanding who he or she is as an African and looking at the world through that lens. And when you are able to approach the world from that standpoint, then that brings about that health, wealth, and wisdom. So these are some of the things that we'll discuss in greater detail tomorrow. But I mention it here really because we cannot escape addressing this in any honest discussion that we undertake related to our health. So I'll move on a bit and we'll come back to that. So we talked about, what are some of the things that we can do to address this? So when we think about prevention, I want to just kind of lay out first what the levels of prevention are. So there's primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. So primary, of course, deals with preventing the occurrence of disease. So those things that we do just to prevent them from occurring at all. Secondary prevention has more to do with screening. So early detection of a disease, knowing early that it exists so that you can begin to treat it. And then tertiary prevention deals with monitoring disease, the complications, and preventing progression. And so I'll talk a little bit about each of those, mostly primary and secondary prevention though. And I'm going to start with secondary prevention because primary prevention then will take me somewhat into the next area of our discussion. So in terms of screening, so remember, secondary prevention is where we're looking at identifying a disease, the presence of disease early on, so that we can address it. So those are going to be things like for men, addressing blood pressure, checking blood pressure to look for evidence of elevated blood pressure, checking blood glucose to screen for diabetes, particularly in those who are between the ages of 40 and 75, who also are obese. And then cholesterol screening, so identifying elevations in cholesterol levels, checking weight, and checking something called a BMI, which is the weight as it relates to height, such that if elevated, then recommendations can be made about how to bring the weight back into better control to avoid those diseases that are directly related to obesity, such as diabetes, such as problems with the joints like osteoarthritis, and then some cancers even that are related to obesity. Waist circumference, so measuring the size of the waist, which for a man, a waist circumference over 40 is considered to be at increased risk for cardiovascular disease, and for a woman, one above 35 is considered to increase one's risk for cardiovascular disease. Colon cancer screening. So we know about that there are a number of different ways to screen for colon cancer, but because we know that it is one of the cancers that we die of at higher rates, it's important to be screened either through colonoscopies or some of the other methods that are used for screening for colon cancer. That's usually recommended between the age of 50 and 74, particularly for those. I mean, it's particularly for those who are at average, low to average risk for colon cancer, and then for those who are at increased risk, then that screening should occur earlier. And then PSA. So doing a screening PSA, which is a screening for prostate cancer, that should be done as well, starting at the age of 40. If you look at the national recommendations, they actually recommend against doing prostate cancer screening, and that is largely because of the fact that many of the studies that were done on colon cancer were actually done on Caucasian men, among whom the prostate cancer rates are lower. We know that among African American men, that they are at higher rates, and certainly the death rate is significantly higher, often because it's diagnosed at a much later stage and at a more and tend to have more aggressive cancer. So something very important to look at, and very important to be sure that those screens are being done. And then smoking. So for obviously smoking, and that'll be into our next section where we're talking about primary prevention, but certainly stop not smoking is advised. But for those who either presently smoke or have a history of smoking and have a history of smoking a certain amount and haven't and have smoked within the last 15 years, there's screening that should be done for lung cancer with something called a low dose CT. It's a certain type of a CT scan that screens for cervical cancer. For lung cancers. So these are all screenings. Again, they do not go into primary prevention. We're going to talk about primary prevention shortly, but they are important to do because for each of these, if identified early and addressed early, it can decrease the risk of significant complications related to having these diagnoses. So I'm going to go on and talk a bit about some of the screenings for women. Some of them are the same. So when we talk about blood pressure, screening for diabetes, checking cholesterol, the waist circumference, those are all going to be the same. But the ones that are different are going to be the mammograms, which are recommended for breast cancer screening. You remember I mentioned that for breast cancer, the rate of breast cancer is very slightly higher for white women than for Black women, but the death rate for Black women is considerably higher, about 40% higher. So that's something that is important to be screened for. Pap smears as a screening for cervical cancer, and then colon cancer screening, as I mentioned, for men. Now, for both, it's recommended that HIV and hepatitis C be screened for on a regular basis for HIV, actually starting at the age of 15, and for hepatitis C starting at the age of 18. So these are all things that should be done just kind of as part of your regular visits with your physician, and can be a way, again, of identifying issues that need to be addressed early. I didn't mention, although I should, the importance of dental care. So seeing a dentist every 6 months is important, because we do know that that issues with oral health are directly related to cardiovascular health, particularly issues around gingivitis and periodontal disease, because of the kind of inflammatory response that occurs related to that. So very important also to have those things done. Now, as we move on into talking about primary prevention, this again much reaches back to some of the same suggestions and recommendations that were raised in Being Healthy and Wealthy. And I'll spend a moment talking about them. So nutrition is one of the first ones. And if you've read the text, then you know that at each of the stages, nutrition was addressed as being an important approach to maintaining health. And I'll back up a bit from this, is remember that we're talking about health as it relates to mind, body, and spirit. So we often think about each of these practices that I'm going to talk about as being more ones that deal with physical health. But when we recognize that that we're one with the Creator, and understand that from a spiritual level, then we have no other option really than to optimize our practices as it relates to each of these things that I'm talking about. So remember that this is all connected. None of it is at all disconnected. So as we think about nutrition, then we're talking about fresh fruits and vegetables. If you think about your plate, if you kind of think about the plate as a circle, then at least half of your plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables of various colors. Should be a very colorful plate. And the reason for that is that that the nutrients that are in the fruits and vegetables create different colors in them. And so if you're eating a variety of colors of vegetables, then you know that you also are getting a variety of nutrients. So that's very important. And then about a quarter of the plate, some form of protein. So whether that's protein that comes from a non-starchy vegetable, or whether that's protein for those who eat meat from a lean meat with fish or lean chicken or poultry, excuse me, then that would be for those who do eat meat. And then the other quarter is some kind of a whole grain. Now there also is the need then for some source of calcium, and some of the recommendations around nutrition that you may see, it'll say dairy. Dairy is not necessarily in fact, in some instances, dairy is recommended not to consume dairy, but the key there is really just the source of calcium that it provides. So making sure that you have a good source of calcium too. Now, exercise. The recommended amount of exercise is anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes of exercise, at least 5 days per week. So if you're doing that, then wonderful. If you are not, then even if you start with 5 minutes and work your way up. Even if you can only do about 10 minutes at a time, it's been shown that if you do 10 minutes of exercise at a time, and it's broken up into increments that add up to that 30 minutes or that, up to the 45 minutes, then that actually is as beneficial as doing it all in one sitting. So the exercise becomes important, and various types of exercise across the different stages of life. We know that as we get older, then the weight-bearing exercises are particularly important for the prevention of osteoporosis. And so Um, and then stretching exercises, of course. All of those help to prevent injury, particularly in the later ages of life. So any kind of exercise that deals with balance, stretching, again, weight-bearing exercise, those have all been shown to decrease the risk of falls in our older people. And so it's important to do that. Stress reduction. So, in Healthy and Wealthy, it talks about from the embryonic stage, on into the fetal stage to being, to the point of birth and the point of the toddler, that each of those stages, and certainly all the way through eldership, that reduction of stress is key. And so that means both with stress related to the words that we use with each other, the situations that we place ourselves in, reducing stress in those, or avoiding stress to the extent that we can, is significantly important at all stages of life. And again, this is all connected. In some instances, we know what the physical connection is. In some instances, we don't, or the scientific connection that we've been able to name and study. But this is one that actually even does have a research-based connection, that we know that with increases in cortisol levels and other stress hormones, that persons with these cortisol surges is often when we see heart attacks occur. We know that increased cortisol levels also increase glucose levels in the body, and so that's where we see the increased risk of diabetes. And for those who have diabetes and have these kind of stress surges, are the ones who end up with the uncontrolled diabetes that lands them in the hospital. So we know that stress has a significant impact on health. And it's not just related to what Western medicine would have us to believe is only mental health. It's not isolated to that, because again, it all is connected. I talked about dental care already, and then quitting or not starting smoking is important. Smoking has actually been identified as the number one preventable action as it relates to diseases. The number one preventable cause of disease, and diseases that lead to death are related to smoking. So certainly not smoking or quitting smoking. Now, I've just kind of run through some of the primary prevention aspects of life, being things that are important for us to do in terms of preventing disease. Now, we know that we have responsibility to that. Responsibility to each other for that. And again, it is laid out in Healthy and Wealthy, Being Healthy and Wealthy very well. So it talks about each of the stages of life and what that support team's role is in ensuring that whether we're talking about a child all the way through eldership, that reducing stress in one's environment becomes important. We know that holding one accountable to exercise and holding each other accountable to eating well are all important aspects of what the support teams at each of those stages of living are to do. And so all of this, again, really it goes back to both on a personal level, scheduling those appointments with one's healthcare provider to do those kind of secondary prevention things. But then those primary prevention things are on a personal level, but we also know that they are on a family level and on a community level as well. It's interesting, when I actually was considering even what type of medicine I was going to practice. One of the reasons that I decided upon family medicine is because I recognized early, I think not to the extent that I understand now, but even on a very basic level, I understood that some of the chronic diseases that plague our community, that they can be changed or they can be prevented by practices that we undertake in our families and in our communities. And so I thought about, that family medicine as being an opportunity for me to address it really at the family level, because it is not just an individual choice in terms of what we it's not an individual choice in terms of those kinds of practices that we undertake. Now I'm going to shift just for a moment, and thank you. I'm glad to see the request for people to place their questions and comments, and I will definitely address those as I finish. Now I want to take just a moment to talk about COVID. We have to talk about it because it is all around us. I know that there is, again, just COVID as just kind of to place us all on a level playing field, is a virus caused by SARS, the coronavirus. That is a novel coronavirus, novel because it's different from a form that we've seen in the past, that we see that causes increased respiratory infections and respiratory failure. We see that it has a negative impact on the kidneys, has some impact on the ear, nose, and throat system and the nervous system. But the complications that we see and some on the dermatologic, especially in children, we're seeing some issues around skin manifestations in children. But we know that the biggest concerns, the ones that have led to death in most cases, have been related to respiratory or lung failure, or infection and kidney failure. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion in our community about, is this real? Was this a man-made disease? Perhaps we don't know that for sure. But I would offer to say that if we think about anything else that has affected us in the way that COVID has, if I just give an analogy and think about whether we're talking about the British, the French, the Spanish, those from Belgium, regardless of which ones we're talking about, they all have their knees on our necks, and the issue that we have to address is that knee on the neck. And so I raise that as a analogy to say that in this case, until we have a sense of where this came from for sure, the biggest issue is that we address this knee on our neck, or in this case on our health, which is COVID. So I'm saying all that to say that our kind of approach to it really at this point is, how do we mitigate this in our community? We know that, if we think about the percentage of Africans in America in terms of the overall population is about 13.4% or so, but we know that we make up about 20% of the cases of COVID, about 22% of the deaths related to COVID, which is unacceptable. And we know that in some areas that those numbers are even higher. Whites, on the other hand, about 60% of the population, and about 38% of the percentage. So they're about, as it relates to their proportionality in the overall population, they're at about half. We're, in terms of the cases and deaths, higher than the percentage or proportion that we are in the population. So that's a problem. And that's the problem that we really have to address. And so that is in some cases related to, or in some way, in terms of how to protect ourselves from that, is going to be some of those primary practices that I talked about in terms of exercise, getting sunlight. Didn't talk about that before, but getting adequate sunlight, eating well, making sure that we're doing things to boost our immune systems, like taking vitamin C and zinc, and again, making sure that we're getting good sunlight and vitamin D and things of that nature. Exercising, de-stressing, or limiting the amount of stress that we expose ourselves to. So all of those things are helpful. And then when we think about from a community level, and this is really where we get to on those. I talked about kind of the individual and the personal, individual and family level, and somewhat on the community level as I was talking about the support teams related to doing those primary prevention practices. But even on a very tangible community level, thinking about things like how we can be sustainable. So are we working together with establishing community gardens such that we can trust the food that we're growing and eating food that we can trust? You know, are we collectively gathering to connect spiritually and to bolster our spiritual health? So those are the kinds of things that we really have to think about as being part of the solution, and not even on an esoteric or level, but I mean on a very tangible level, that those are specific things that we should be doing both to address some of these chronic diseases that we talked about, but then also this one that is addressed that we're facing right now related to COVID. So I'm going to move forward and just to kind of as I prepare to close, just mention a few other concepts related to some approaches that we can take to addressing the health in our community from an African perspective. So one of them is to think about those lessons that we learned from our families. You know, we don't need a research study. We don't need a physician to tell us some of those things that we have seen our family, those lessons that we've learned in our family, whether we're talking about from our parents, our grandparents, other just practices that we've seen that have been sustaining. So whether that's growing and eating our own food, waking up early in the morning, getting adequate sunlight, telling the truth, treating each other the way that that we know that we should be treated. I mean, the way that we want to be treated, and that each of us should be treated. Honoring the God inside of all of us. So those are things that I know we have seen played out in our families, and we've seen examples of them in our families. Those are all parts of the ingredients to health that we should embrace and recognize actually as being part of the way to address health. Again, remembering that there is oneness of mind, body, and spirit, and embracing that oneness and recognizing that at any level, and I almost don't even have to like to talk about it as levels, because they all are one. But if any component of that is out of sync with the other, then that is where we find again these kind of things that have names to them, like hypertension and diabetes, but really are just the physical manifestations of there being some level of being out of sync in these areas. Remembering the importance of the congruence between our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, and what that means in terms of our spiritual health. That when any one of those is out of sync, it creates increased stress, which, as you remember, also increases those stress hormones, including cortisol, and then we know what the impact of those on our bodies is. And then finally, we know what our ancient ancestors taught, our ancient Kemetic ancestors taught about the importance of good speech. So about Medu Nefer, and that, you know, somewhat is tied in with that congruence of our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, and remembering that our aim, our goal, every day that we live should be to reach divine speech or Medu Nefer. And so with that, I want to close, just so that we can spend some time responding to any questions that anyone may have, and then just remembering that these are just a few of the keys to reaching health, wealth, to being healthy, wealthy, and wise. And it's only through doing that we truly can build for eternity. So with that, I'll say Hotep, and I will listen out, or I'll read for your questions. Uh-oh. Let's see what's happening here. All right. So I see a question, Dr. Riba, what would be your advice about gathering in person at this time? Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. I didn't even address those things in the discussion about COVID. Yes, so let's talk about that because that does deserve more discussion. So I talked about some of those health practices in terms of fortifying our bodies for to help to at least decrease the complications if we are exposed to COVID. But to your point, gatherings in close quarters right now, I still would recommend against doing that. What we're finding is that the practices that are most consistent with preventing transmission are maintaining some distance, and the distance that's been that we hear about is at least 6 feet. And the idea around that is really that because the virus is carried in respiratory droplets, that typically a sneeze, a cough, even with somebody talking loudly and may kind of emit some respiratory droplets while they're talking. Usually that will travel not more than about 6 feet. And so that's the reason, behind the 6 feet that we talk about. So there's maintaining that distance and also using the mask. Now remember, the mask helps to protect other people. So if someone happens to be infected, whether they know it or not, and they're wearing a mask, transmission is reduced significantly if they are wearing a mask, and it helps to protect others. Now, if that person is wearing a mask and the person that they're encountering is wearing a mask, that even further reduces the transmission. Right now, still I would agree for the most part with the recommendation about not gathering in large numbers. If a gathering is to occur indoors, then of course still maintaining that distance and using a mask would be important. Now outside is probably a safer way to gather in groups, but still it's important to maintain that distance. And it's unfortunate because the way that we interact as Africans is we're very social. We hug, we receive each other's energy, often through being close to each other. And so we have to think about how do we continue to stimulate and promote that, even when it may not necessarily be safe for us to be in close quarters together. So that's right. I do for sure. And what's that? That's still pretty doggone far for droplets to fly. That's true, but it does happen. So that's what. I do agree with that particular recommendation. Obviously, washing hands frequently is important as well. Since we do know that there is some transmission from businesses can live for short periods of time on surfaces that touching a surface and then touching one's face, because it can be transmitted through the mucous membranes, both in the eyes, the mouth, and the nose. They want to try to avoid it that way as well. And so we said how important is wearing eye protection along with the mask. So that does offer some increased protection because again, the eyes are one of the areas where mucous membranes present, particularly in the inside of the eyelid. And so it is recommended to have either a mask or just some glasses, something that can help to prevent exposure in that way from respiratory droplets. And I see there's a question that's there now. Hatem, I don't know if you can help me. I can see only the chats that are up right now, but there's not a stream of chats over on of questions in the chat over on the side. If anybody else, I don't know if I've missed any, and I want to make sure.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
Greg Dylan Arnold said, "Thank you." Were there any other questions out there? I could go on and start asking some questions. Mm-hmm. So you telling me my glasses are finally coming in handy for something other than just you getting on my nerves and being on my nose?
Right. They're coming in somewhat handy for that. So yeah, glasses, goggles. Like I said, the face shields obviously offer a good deal of protection, but even glasses do help some. And again, if everybody is wearing a mask, then, if somebody happens to be infected and, again, knowing it or not knowing it, I'm sorry, whether they know it or not, then that confers some protection to other people around you. So that is helpful.
Okay. Now I have a question for you. You said the oneness of the. So how what are some things that you recommend for people to take care of themselves emotionally during this time? Because we're social creatures. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we had to cancel. Like for example, we're doing this interview over the internet rather than live because as people, uh, it's kind of healthy for us to gather. So what things can you suggest that we do to kind of deal with some of this downtime? Because there's a lot of downtime for some of us.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot of downtime, and connecting on this format, obviously is one way, but it's not the same. It's like you said, it's not the same as connecting in person. So some of the things may be if walking outside in either or meeting outside in a park where you can still be somewhat distanced, but you can still kind of feel each other's energy. Also, I think Tawi still does this, but I know years ago with the African Center, there would be times when we would do rituals where we were doing the same thing all at the same time and connecting our spiritual energies that way. So those would be that would be one of the things on kind of a spiritual level, where even if we're not together physically, that can be a way that we are connecting still. I don't know that I have the best answer for that because I've not completely figured it out myself. But just things like checking in on people, just calling each other more frequently, checking in on each other. It's not to say that connecting via Zoom or other formats like this. At least we're allowed to talk, but they're not the same. They're not the same. Even in teaching, I don't feel like I'm connecting as well with my residents when we do our didactics on this format, and you feel the difference. And so there's no way really around this. And so then we really in this instance, I think it comes back down to tapping further into the ways that we are connected spiritually. And that's, again, rituals, deciding on, doing a ritual at the same time, meditating on if there's a particular thing that we're trying to address as a family, meditating on that together, for a period of time as well. So those are some things that we certainly can try to do, and may at least fill in the gap a bit during this time. I see there's a question from Mama Alona. You talked about stress reduction. What are some of the things you would suggest to reduce stress? So one of the things is, for those stressful situations that we can avoid them. Now, obviously, there are some things that are not avoidable, and so there are a few just regular practices that we can do. So I talked a bit about walking outside in the sun, being in nature. Those are connecting with nature. Those are certainly practices that help with stress reduction. Doing deep breathing exercises, doing meditation exercises, kind of mindfulness exercises where you spend some time really being aware of every part of your body. Like, what are you feeling in this part of your body? What am I doing? Even controlling, the rate of your breath through these mindfulness exercises. Those are all things that can be done to relax. I didn't talk about sleep, but sleep is so very important as a way to address stress. Getting adequate amounts of sleep is extremely useful in terms of kind of having at baseline decreased stress levels, and then also allowing you to be able to handle stressful situations when they occur. I often say, in many instances, we're not able to control whether or not stress is going to come. Remember, that's part of the balance. We don't live life doesn't exist without that balance. There's going to be some stress. The question is, how do we then handle it? So do we jump off immediately after each thing that may otherwise stress us, or do we take a moment to be aware and in control of our thoughts related to it, and then that can control our words and our actions, such that we're not doing those things that then we have to later regret, and that then would increase the stress. But I would say, adequate rest. To the extent that doing various deep breathing exercises, meditation, and certainly connecting with nature. I didn't mention one thing. I don't know how many of you have gardens, but really connecting with whether it's planting seeds, pulling even being outside, pulling the weeds, or going out and actually collecting the harvest. There is a great deal of relaxation that can occur through those activities, and then you learn more about nature too. Even things as simple, and not as simple, it's really quite intricate, but looking at the root systems that come from different types of plants, all become ways that we can better connect with nature that helps with that stress reduction. So I hope some of those things were helpful. And Elder Tony says that she's talking about the drum talk that we used to do from all the spots where we were at the specific time. Let's say 7. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I was referring to. What other questions from the family or comments?
All right, once again, she asking for questions. Any questions? Any other questions out there? Why you got the Dr. House? Right. So, what is your particular practice, sister?
Yes, I care for patients in family medicine. Family medicine is the specialty that I practice. And family medicine encompasses the care of babies from the time they're born and through elders to the time that they make transition to the next realm. As part of family medicine, I also take care of pregnant women and deliver their babies. I just stopped a few years ago doing the actual deliveries, but I still take care of the newborns. But all of that falls under the umbrella of family medicine. And then I see your question, Mama Lona. I'll answer that about suggestions for our children. Then I also, in my role at Morehouse School of Medicine, am the Family Medicine Residency Program Director. So the in residency essentially says that for those persons after they graduate from medical school and decide what specialty they're going to practice, then residency is the period of time that they get training within that specialty. So I'm the Residency Program Director and the Assistant Dean of Graduate Medical Education, which means that I have some oversight into the curriculum and the educational elements of all of the residency programs at Morehouse School of Medicine. And so, Mama Lona, you asked, what are some things that you would suggest for our children? Now, it's generally related to stress, if you can clarify. Well, I'll talk in general about things for children. If you want to clarify while I'm talking. So for the children, first establishing an excellent support system through the family, the extended family, the community, and making sure that the child understands again who they are and what how they fit into the world. So that starts out with, understanding, developing trust between those people, the family and the community around the child. And specific things, very specific recommendations would be around, storytelling, around demonstrating through our actions the proper way to address each other, telling stories and teaching, through art, through the stories that we read to the children about great examples in our history, whether they be persons who are still among us or ancestors that we can point to say these are people who were examples of that were examples of good character, or were examples of people who were able to, of how people faced a specific challenge and what they did to face a challenge. So doing those kinds of things are helpful, I think, in establishing a child's understanding of who they are in the world and how to interact with each other. I'll say also, it just, and I go back to Dr. Cambone's idea around the African self-consciousness, that it makes such a tremendous difference when a child starts out understanding who he or she is as an African, and what that means to the way that they approach the world. It really kind of, with every decision, so there's no decision then that can be made that doesn't start with how is my action going to impact African people. So you think about Mama Marimba always talks about do what's good for African people. And so it kind of is in that same vein, that there's not a single thing that we can approach really without considering how it's going to affect African people, and therefore how it affects us, because we are all connected. So if we think that we're individuals and can do something, and then we go out and do it, and it negatively impacts the other, other Africans, then that too creates some unsteadiness, even in the child, whether they know that that's why they're unsteady, or why we know that's why the child is unsteady or not. So that's just kind of, now if you were asking about things that we can suggest for our children related to your other question with regard to stress, then some of it is the same, allowing them to be able to talk about, feel comfortable with talking about their feelings, allowing them to know that it's safe to be honest about their feelings. And it's important to be honest about their feelings, because only through better understanding them can we help our children to be able to work through challenging times, even this one, because we know that socializing with other children is an important part of children's development. So allowing them the space to be able to talk about how not being able to be face to face with their friends affects them. We're about to go back into school, and a lot of schools are going to be on virtual formats. So what does that mean when the only interaction that you have with your peers and with your teacher is through a computer screen? And so it's kind of, what will that mean in terms of the social development over time? I don't know that we have all the answers to that, but we definitely do have to make sure that we are paying very close attention to the impact that it's having. So being, talking frequently to our children, and then allowing them to connect with their friends. Again, even if it's only on a screen, or even if it's on a safe distance. I actually went to a 10-year-old's birthday party, and they had foot races where they were standing at a distance from each other. They did a dance contest where everybody kind of stood at a distance, and one of the Watoto would go into the middle and do a dance. I mean, it was an excellent part. So they were able to still connect, but they were doing so in a safe way. So figuring out creative ways that our Watoto can connect, I think will also be very critical during this time.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I am.
All right, your thoughts on school opening?
So I think that it's unsafe right now, anyway, for schools to open on the regular face-to-face basis. There were some models that were discussed where students could be on a what we call a hybrid model, where some of the students go on some days and then others go on other days, where the distancing was able to be practiced, using the masks, both the teacher and the students to do that. So, I mean, I think if it can be carried out, then it may be okay, because again, the social interaction is important. The challenge is that, especially for young children, keeping the masks on will be difficult. And again, it's just natural for us to touch and to connect. And so the question then just becomes how you're able to manage that for the young child, while trying to balance the need for them to also be able to connect socially with their peers. So the safest thing right now is kind of what some of the school systems have gone to, with at least starting out the school year on a virtual format. And and in our school system, I'll say, for example, the initial plan was to return face to face like usual. Everybody back in the school. Now, parents were given the option to choose a virtual school if you wanted to. Now, of course, the numbers, as you may have seen in watching the news or reading the paper, in Georgia have skyrocketed. They're much higher now than they were even initially back in the spring. So because of that, then the school systems here have had to take a step back, and now are, to my knowledge, all of the ones in the Atlanta metropolitan area are starting out virtually. And I think that's probably the safest way to do that right now. I do still maintain that caution, in the sense that I do have a concern about what it may mean in terms of the social development of children. And so we have to pay close attention to that.
All right, here we go. Another question. So we got a lot. Man, why these white women keep talking?
Well, I was going to ask you the same thing, Tim.
We was watching the movie. Are you in there? Hey, man, I need some productions out here, man. God.
That is very stressful, Tim.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All right, family. But hey, we getting in the studio. I mean, because at first we didn't have nothing behind us but a brick wall. Like, it looked like we was in prison. White babies now. But this is the issue. Question.
Yes.
How? Because we got a lot of people coming online. They studied medicine online. Online scholars. They come online. They do a little bit of research, and they're experts at everything. And they say that this COVID thing is not real. Can you share with the people how COVID is affecting you in your practice, especially being in Atlanta? Because we get word, according, if I'm only watching YouTube, this shit ain't real. The hospitals are empty. What do you say to that?
No, it's real. I can tell you that in both of the hospitals where we admit, one that I admit, and the other one that both that our residents go to, Grady Hospital and Atlanta Medical Center South, the ICUs are at capacity with patients who have COVID. So that it is not true, that it's not real. And then those are just the two hospitals where we admit, but in the reports that we're getting from the other hospitals in the Atlanta area, it is the same really across the city, to the point that there are times when, one or more of the hospitals at any given time may have to go on what's called diversion status, which means that they're so full that any ambulances or what have you that are coming have to be diverted to other hospitals just because they don't have the capacity. So it's real. I can tell you that in our practice, we've had patients who've been everywhere from being asymptomatic to patients who've had mild symptoms, may have just had a loss of taste and smell and no symptoms other than that, to some that have had some respiratory symptoms with the fever and everything, to those who've had to be admitted to the hospital and remain there for some time. Now, there are not everybody who is admitted to the hospital succumbs to the disease, but we do know that people are becoming very sick from it. Our people are becoming very sick from it, and it's not something that we can really say does not exist. I see in my practice the great and significant impact that COVID is having. And I see a question about the vaccination. So I have a concern. I mean, there are two parts of the coin. With any new vaccination, I am very cautious about about it, especially among our people. I know that there, with the trials that are being done now on the vaccinations, some of them even, or one of them, excuse me, specifically, even that is using the HBCU medical schools as a testing site. And I was a bit concerned when I learned about that, just because of what we understand about trials. Now, at the same time, I know that there have been times when, whether we're talking about a vaccine or we see it more frequently with medications, that during the clinical trials, when we're not part of those trials, then the outcomes end up being generalized to us, when the outcomes that they found in one group of people may not be applicable to us. And so on that level, if we could trust those who are doing the studies, then there will be an argument for that. I have a concern. I'll just say that I do have a concern there, because we don't exactly know. I mean, if we had our scientists who were behind, who are primarily responsible for the studies, and we could trust that, then I would be a little less concerned. But I see both sides of it. I have to be honest with you. I see both sides of it because, we need to understand how these impact us, but because of the side effects that could occur in anything that we don't know about. And that's the reason for doing these various trials, is to determine its effectiveness and what, if anything, are the negative impacts of it, whether we're talking about something for blood pressure or an antibiotic or a vaccine. It's all the same thing in terms of testing.
All right, let's say my sister, because that's her field, and they be monitoring stuff, so we won't, so if you have questions about the vaccination, call her, or you know what I'm saying, because we put her on the spot right now. She'll say something, next thing you know, she'll be on, so we won't go there. But we got a brother Kwame. How do we get our hands on microscopes and the likes so that we can begin training our own? And speaking of that, how should we start training our own so that we can start bringing it from what you have experienced, so we can start bringing young people up that are interested in stuff like this? You know what I'm saying? So that when they hear something about it, like a COVID-19, they are fascinated by it and they want to study something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean that's some of the work. So and that's why I said that's the other side of that coin. So there's some of that work that does occur at the HBCU medical schools, where I say specifically like Morehouse School of Medicine, where we have pipeline programs. We're starting all the way down at elementary school, and then at the middle school ages, actually coming on campus and learning some basic principles of research and how to begin even from something that you're curious about to developing a research question, and how do you develop a research study to explore that, and then what do you do then with the outcomes from the study. Those are some of the things that actually can happen in within the walls of the HBCU medical schools and at other medical schools. But I'll say at least the HBCUs, which each were founded for the purpose of addressing the needs of the under-resourced communities, and specifically African American communities. That in those institutions, that were part of their mission is to improve the health in our communities. And with Morehouse School of Medicine, I can say, for example, where our vision is to lead in the creation and in the creation of health equity. And so if then we have young people who have an interest, there are avenues for that exploration. And even before you get to the medical school level, the science departments in the colleges and the undergraduate institutions do it. I had one of my early exposures on a college campus between my junior and senior year in high school, when I came and did a research program at Morehouse. And so those exposures do to exist. And so when we have, and that's what I was getting at in terms of our scientists, where, like we have my sister at Dr. Green at Morehouse School of Medicine, who some of you may have read about, who has done some tremendous work in the area of cancer and identifying some. Has made some leeway there and is really just trying to find additional funding for how to, move to the next level in some of the findings that she's made in cancer treatment through her research. So we do have the infrastructure there. We have we have models of where it has worked. And so I just say that kind of to the previous question about treading lightly, but in terms of the exposure for our young people, those exposures do exist. Let's see how.
All right. Because what I got posted now is related to the question that you just answered. How do we find stuff like that? And we're gonna stay in touch.
Now, also, what I'm gonna say too, to this question specifically, there are enough of us who are either teaching or, in my case, teaching, or even people who are more heavily on kind of doing bench research, who, while we work at, an institution, but we have weekends, we have time after hours where, if we have a microscope and can, work together in after school programs or doing things on the weekends in our communities, then that's a way to provide that exposure too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, in a school. It can be that we decide that this is something that we want to expose our young people to, especially those who are African minded and will use what they learn for the purpose of advancement of our people. Then I mean, there's space for that. We just have to build it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm pissed over here because on the day that we got the doctor on, I have an issue that I've been talking with the family about, and I'm gonna get on that on the Daily Toast. But this is the next question I have. Mm-hmm. What's next? I mean, because dealing with the families and stuff, I know it's kind of hard, but I know you are abreast in many ways and probably looking at stuff. Is COVID-19 and the way that it has affected us as a professional, is this something that we may need to start really preparing for? And is this the new normal?
Yeah, it's hard to say, really. I will say that I think we didn't have to be in the situation that we're in right now. We do see the example from other countries where they did do, at least for some period of time, more. They had more. They closed everything down. They had very strict requirements on coming out in masks and distancing, and even controlling the number of people who could be in a store at a given time, things of that nature, and the numbers are far more controlled now. Understanding that once you test, and then what happens if there's a positive, how to manage that such that there's not this continuous exposure to COVID. So it can be controlled. Like, we don't have to be in this situation. So the question then just becomes if that will happen. So to answer it, so the answer to your question is, unfortunately, it could be, at least until there is, we identify a better way to treat it, until if there is a safe vaccine. And I know there are, different schools of thought as far as vaccines are concerned, but if there is a safe vaccine, we do know that in other situations that there have been vaccines that have essentially eliminated, smallpox we don't see in the population because of that, because of what was, the ward immunity that was conferred because of the smallpox vaccine, for example. So, there is a space for that potentially down the line. So, it doesn't have to be, but because in America there is such lack of discipline, and there's this sense that I should be able to do everything or anything whenever I want to do it, and I don't want to be confined to any kind of restrictions. That's why we are where we are. Folks wanted to go to beaches, folks wanted to go to the club, folks wanted to go to the bar as soon as they open, folks wanted to be inside a restaurant and wear a mask or not wear a mask. So there are things that we can do to control this, and we have to decide that it's important enough to do that.
All right, so I'm out of questions, but Brother Kwame got one up. Was Dr. Green the one told she needed to monetize her treatment in order to get more backing for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got something up. I'm put it up right now. Revisiting Dr. Riba's primary, secondary, and tertiary actions. That's the Black Yoda. And then we got Mama Margarita. She asks, what COVID-19 data do we have from Cuba? I don't know if you got information on that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I know that they did identify some ways. I don't know the exact numbers, in other words, but I know that they did identify some effective treatment, and I believe they even did. Trying to remember what country now. I should know that, but I know that they actually were helpful in at least one other country, at least one other, in terms of doing that. Now, of course, we know the relationship between the U.S. and Cuba, so unfortunately, I don't know that we will see on a large scale a benefit from that unless we push for that more. But my understanding is that the Cubans actually have done some work that has been positive in regard to addressing COVID-19. What would you say to impress our people, the importance of making our health a priority? What would I say to impress the importance? I think if the numbers at the beginning don't tell enough of the story, if what we see day to day, even from, even when we look at our interactions, even when you look at the images that and the ways that we're portraying ourselves in the media, even when we understand, when I talked about mental health and the fact that with mental health diseases that they persist longer with us, even when we look at the suicide rates that are increasing among us, and understand that all of that comes from a place of general unhealth on the mental, physical, and spiritual level. We just have to pay attention to that and know that it is extremely important that we pay attention to our health. And then just on a very practical level, that to know that those things that we need to do in this battle that we're in for our humanity, and in the work that we need to do in building African institutions for eternity. We can't do that if we're unwell. So we have to protect our health at all costs, because that's our responsibility. That's our responsibility to ourselves and to our community, to our ancestors, and to those who are yet born. So it's only through protecting our health that we're able to do what we were sent on this earth to do. And so I would say that really as just the importance of us paying attention to our health. And let's see, we do remember we were told that the herd concept would balance out. Yeah.
I put that one up because that's Elder Tony, and I wanted to know what did you think about the whole herd discussion that was struck up at the early part of the COVID piece?
Well, so the issue with that is that we actually don't know enough right now about COVID and what it means when a person has had COVID as it relates to future immunity. We've seen some instances when people have tested positive, tested negative, and then sometime later even outside of, we know that it can, that the testing can remain positive for about 21 days, even after the infection has cleared. It's just that we can still find its presence in small numbers in the testing. So even outside of that 21-day period, where you would have expected a person to have otherwise cleared it, that then you have sometime later that same person who had tested positive thought it was cleared and then is testing positive again. So the idea around herd immunity that could be inferred or conferred, based on somebody having had the disease and then having immunity related to that, we don't know that actually is something that truly will be protective, because we're, and again, we still don't know enough. So when people are testing positive again, is this now a new strain? We certainly do know with these increased numbers that we're seeing now that that COVID is acting a little bit differently. We know that it's still that classic presentation that we saw early on among the elders, but we have younger people who are showing up in emergency rooms and cardiac arrests, and we find that they're COVID positive. So what is that? And so we don't know that if we now are seeing other strains of the same thing. So at this point, I don't think that the idea of herd immunity based on persons who've had COVID who now have antibodies against it, I'm not convinced that that's something that really will be protective for us.
So we really don't have enough experience. Basically, we don't have enough experience with this virus right now to determine whether somebody will be actually immune to it.
That's right.
And which is cool. Mm-hmm. Now, let me see. All right. So if there are any more questions, Brother Kwame says some are being paid up to $500 a month for their antibodies after having made it through. Ooh. See, now, Dr. Riba, let me ask you this, because now I ran into a bunch of black folks now, and I don't know if this happened in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Shouts out to Brother Malik. I see you out there. I'm gonna post your question up. But a bunch of black people had this mysterious pneumonia, and or it was diagnosed as pneumonia and then bronchitis.
Yeah.
I mean, right before there was a major announcement about the COVID and all the shutdowns. Mm-hmm. Are these things related? I'm all right. I'm acting like I'm really questioning, but are these things related?
Probably so. We didn't know what it was. I think because if you think about those respiratory illnesses, like you said, the bronchitis, the pneumonia, that people were very sick from, and over a short period of time, in some instances, people who died from them, but it didn't have a name and nobody knew to test for COVID because people didn't know that COVID existed. But yeah, no, you're right. Back in like the November, December, January timeframe, that was happening, and so it probably is related. And so we it's quite possible that we have been dealing with it for longer than we recognized, because it just wasn't recognized as an entity. Yeah.
Because I know several people who were sick for months.
Yeah.
And they was diagnosed with pneumonia or bronchitis, and the doctor was talking about we never seen it before. Now I don't know if you can see Brother Malik's whole question. Brother Malik, I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spirit. So he said, can you see his whole question?
I can. So he said he's basically asking what are the additional forms of protections for our bodies that we can take. Was there something more?
Yeah, some more on there. Hold on. He says, protection for our bodies we can take to avoid illness in conjunction with distancing and masks. What is the importance of boosting our immune system during this time? And he said, pardon, because he's just not coming in. Thank you for joining us, Brother Malik.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that question, because we could never talk about that too much. So, some of the things around eating healthy. So plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables.
Whoa. You say I gotta give up pork?
I tell him I'm not messing with you. So healthy fruit, fresh fruits and vegetables. With a variety of colors, because the colors do each provide different nutrients, or each of the nutrients cause the fruits and vegetables to have different colors. So you want to have a variety. Certainly having vitamin C, zinc, getting good sunshine to help to stimulate the vitamin D conversion to vitamin D. Those are all examples of things that we can do. Exercise, adequate sleep, and maintaining low levels of stress or stress reduction. All of those things do have properties that can help to boost the immune system.
All right, this is the Brother Hot Tim question. First off, you ready?
I am.
All right. How do you feel about reparations?
So about reparations, well, we have to decide. I think that reparations are necessary. I think that they can. It really just, we have to decide what it is that we would want in the way of reparations. So the idea of
stop there, baby, because I want you to protect your job. I need you in the position you in.
Okay.
All right. I just saying, but
I don't think that it is. I don't think that it's necessarily that controversial. I mean, we know. I mean, in that regard. Well, no. I don't mean it's not controversial, but I'm just saying that the idea, in any thinking person can recognize that on some level there needs to be some repair. Now, what does that mean? Is a conversation that we can have all day. So I don't know how deeply we want to go into that, but I
won't go there.
Yeah.
I just because I'm trying to get as many professionals and people in positions to be like, at least be thinking about the idea and looking at the importance of it and balancing out a lot of stuff that's happening. Now, here's another Hot Tim question. If you could only prescribe one, because I'm eating pork, I'm smoking cigarettes and weed, I'm drinking alcohol, and there's only one practice that you could prescribe for me to be healthy, what would that practice be? Out of all the practices, I know because being a doctor, and being somebody that came up out of the tradition, you're going to look at things holistically. If there's one thing that I can add to my life, what would you suggest?
So I'm going to tell you the answer that came immediately to mind, and then I'll give you the one answer that you probably are looking for, a one answer. So the one thing that I would say is to respect the creator inside of you, and then treat the creator as the creator should be treated.
That is not fair. That's not fair. So saying I got to stop doing all the stuff that I'm doing.
If you want me to commit to one of those practices,
practice, because what you did, of course, because you're going to clear off one practice. You want to give me one practice that I can start doing other than stopping some of the shit that I'm already doing. What would it be?
Oh, other than stopping any of those things you mentioned.
Right, yeah, because you trying to make me stop all of them. You be like, respect the creator. And I'm like, so what if the creator smoke? But anyway, I'm just gonna stop. But if, like, for example, if I was a patient, and you knew that I wasn't gonna change any of my ways, but you can say, look, you can add this one thing, just one thing. What is one thing that you can improve? We got other questions coming up too. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's just clarify. So is it something to add, or can I suggest that you discontinue one of the things that you mentioned?
I'm gonna leave it up to you. Either discontinue one. Well, let's do both. Discontinue one, and then, or if I'm not gonna give it up, something I can add to my life to make it better.
Well, no, in all seriousness, I can tell you that of the things that you mentioned, the one that has the greatest evidence in terms of being a kind of a preventable, something that can be used, if stopped, can help to prevent some of the, the diseases and things that we see, it would be smeking. I mean, we know that there's a connection between, no, seriously. I mean, we know there's a connection between smoking and vascular disease. So that means our heart health, that means the circulation in your legs. That means the circulation in other body parts. That means cancer. We know that there are several cancers that are connected with smoking. So, I mean, if we wanted to point to one thing, that's probably the one that has the most evidence in terms
But
of
Dr.
the most
Riba,
scientific evidence.
but Dr. Riba,
Yes, sir.
I could point to the fact that everybody that smoked and had those problems also ate chicken. So how do we know? I'm just messing with you.
I mean, I can break down the science if you want me to.
Ooh. See,
I mean,
but hold on, no, I'm not used to that. Listen, that's dope. That's dope. Listen, but now, if I could add one practice, somebody out here, cool, boom. What would a practice that I could add to my life?
Yeah.
If I'm not giving up none of those things that would be able to improve my life.
I would say exercise, specifically exercise that you're doing outside in the sun. Because, we know that exercise has a positive impact on the way that your body uses insulin. It's good for cardiac health. It's good for emotional health. So, we exercise, it reduces a chemical called endorphins in the body that improves mood and helps to minimize stress, the sense of stress or the impact of stress. So I would say exercise, and like I said, particularly exercise that's done outside where you're getting sun exposure to. So I see Brother Kwame said, prescribe the 21-day challenge beginning with doing exactly what Dr. Riba just said.
Now, because what we got a Nguzu Saba 21-day challenge where individuals can, because they say it's take 21 days to build a habit, but scientifically that hasn't been proven in 21 days. But the concept of doing something on a regular basis until you make it a habit is still good. So we got what we call the 21-day challenge. And what Brother Kwame is talking about is possibly, adding that one piece and taking away one piece to a lifestyle and doing it over 21 days to see how you feel. We also have Sister Isotube. She's saying deep. Oh, okay. And we got Greg and Kelly R. They said it's deep. We got Elder Tony West. I'm gonna post his up. You don't have to give up pork if you raise it yourself, and you know that. I ain't said I was just joking about the pork, but hey, I hear you. We got reparations was the original contract. That's Elder Tony West talking about the original contract. Hey, I got you on that one. Let's see. We got Elder Margaret, who decided to give the name Corona to this epidemic, and what is the meaning scientifically?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, it's just based on something very basic, and that's the way that the appearance of the virus. So if you've seen pictures of the virus that has the core with those proteins, those ribosomes that are sticking kind of out of it, then those not the ribosomes, but the proteins that are sticking out of it, like little the prongs on a crown, then that's where they got the name corona from. It's just from the appearance of the virus itself if you look at it under the microscope.
Any other questions? Because Brother Hatim is out of questions. Now, next time, I want you to come back on the show, but we're going to get you a better camera, baby, because or we're going to use your phone camera. We're going to hook Dr. Riba up, family. You know what I'm saying? But hey, it is good to see you because like you said, and this is what's crazy. You said it's been how many years since you left Columbus?
It's been 31 years, and I didn't think about, it was really only when I sat down and thought about 1989 was when I left to go to college. That was 31 years ago.
So I haven't seen you in 31 years.
It's been, well, I guess when I would come for breaks.
Right.
But outside of that, it's been that long. Mm-hmm.
Family, listen, and now, so this is the power of family, right? You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, I called I called and spoke with her today, and it's like she wasn't gone. You understand what I'm saying? It's like that's the power of developing that tribe. So even when we in times like this, we know that we got family we can call on. So I am going to once again get back in contact with you because like I said, maybe you might be able to develop a 21-day challenge for the family out there that they could do to get their health together. You know what I'm saying? So, and also, are there any other questions? We're gonna give y'all a couple of seconds, and while y'all thinking about it, I'm gonna play a commercial real quick. Sister Riba, we'll be right back. This is one of your pops books, so let me go and promote it.
Good.
All right, family, we back up, and I'm gonna tell y'all why y'all need to support GNJMedia because I'm about to tell y'all what happened and why some of y'all went to GNJMedia.live, it didn't pop up, and I'm gonna cover that in the Daily Toast after we go back. Dr. Riba Kelsey is on. Oh, Brother Kwame Elder Alona wants me to remind everybody that Dr. Riba Kelsey is on tomorrow for the Per Onk. And I'm gonna do it in the same fashion. Dr. Reba, I want to thank you. It was so good to see you.
Yes, likewise.
And I appreciate the fact that you could take my strange way of interviewing and having fun and questions and stuff. So just like with your pops, maybe me, you, and your pops.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I ain't gonna say your pops because he's my pops too. But maybe me, you, and pops could get on and do a show together.
That would
be interesting.
Wonderful. Yes.
But I do know you work long hours because you are a doctor, and we in a pandemic. So you need to let me know when you're able to do that. But also, I want to talk to you about the 21-day challenge. So I'm gonna give you a call, and then also, so now and questions going once. Questions going twice. Questions. All right. Don't y'all be texting me. Oh, here we go. Okay. You got 2 excellent answers. Okay. All right. Hey, so Dr. Reba, I want to thank you and I will see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Family, we're going to tune out and I'm going to come back on and we're going to do the Daily Toast. But I'm going to need a little while because I got to handle some business first. But we're going to do a Daily Toast. It's a little bit later today because we did Elder Tony this morning. If you didn't see him, go back and watch. Then we had this excellent presentation by Dr. Reba C. Kelsey. What does the C stand for?
Colette.
Okay. So Dr. Reba Colette Kelsey, right?
That's right.
And she's stationed down in Atlanta. And what's the name of the school that you at?
Morehouse School of Medicine.
She's at the Morehouse School of Medicine. And I see, because now, one of the things I would love to do an interview about.
What's that?
Because there was a method that had to happen in your house in order for you and your sister. Do your brother have a PhD, a doctorate too?
No.
Okay. But there was a method that was used in your house to produce 2 doctors, because you got a doctor mother a doctor father,
Mhm.
and you a medical doctor, and your sister's a medical doctor. So there had to be something going on, some type of system going on that I think other people would be really interested in.
Yeah. I'll be glad to talk about that. You know, it's one of those things where when you're growing up, you don't recognize exactly what's happening, but in retrospect, I can point to some very specific things.
Are you telling me that you was tricked into becoming a doctor?
No, I wasn't. But I'm gonna tell you when I in my opening remarks when I said that from a very early age I had an understanding that our community needed scientists, and it wasn't even specific to doctors, but our community needed scientists. And because I had that understanding about, again, going back to the connectedness with the community and that I exist because we are. And so, like, my purpose has to be to serve our people. And so if our community needs scientists, then I really had almost a natural affinity to science. Like, I loved it. I love science. I love math. I mean, I could sit and just like play in the science and math and be perfectly content and read. I mean, between science, math, and reading books, that was my thing. And so that was something that was really nurtured in the house. So it was, and you know, my father says that he spoke that even when in the womb. So it was something that when I was in the womb, I mean, and so I mean, I can't say that I really felt or had the affinity necessarily to do anything other than something that was in that. And then over time, you know, there developed that interest in healing and, you know, being a physician. But it wasn't something we were made to do. It was just something that I had an understanding that it was what we needed. And so I'm here to fulfill that purpose.
So now, so what you're saying is that by your father and your mother helping you identify who you were in your community and identifying the needs in the community, you was automatically attracted to the thing that we needed.
Yep.
Oh, that's
absolutely
dope.
right.
That's dope. Yeah.
Yep.
We could write an ebook on that. You want to go and do this, and you know you might be able to retire early.
Well, no, seriously. I mean, that's that.
I'm serious too. You know what I'm saying? I'm serious. But because that piece right there, identifying who you are and identifying the needs in your community and putting those needs first made it possible for you to enjoy something that other kids would look at and be like, oh, that's no fun.
Yeah.
And you said that was fun to you. You know what I'm saying? So so you got any closing remarks before we get off? And because I want you to get ready tomorrow, I want you to get rested. I want you to get a better camera. What type of phone you got?
What can we do about that?
What type of phone you got?
A Samsung.
Which one?
Ooh. I don't know. What is this?
Let me see.
Ask your baby. Ask your baby. The baby know.
It's a Galaxy S10.
Oh. All right. Hey, baby, listen. I need your mom to get on this link tomorrow on that phone. What's up, baby? How you doing?
Hi.
I want help your mom get on this link tomorrow so that she can present on this show because the camera the camera on the computer is not as good. It's
Okay.
not is not as good. The camera.
You know I love you. What happened to YBA?
I know, right?
The camera, because the camera on the computer is good, it's okay, but the camera on your phone is crispy, right? I'm just saying. I want people to see the beauty of your intellect as well as the beauty of the physicality. All right.
Okay. All right.
So family, we gonna if you don't have any closing words.
Just thank you. Really, thank you for having me. It's always good to be with family. And so I just happy to be here. So thank you. Thank you.
So we up and we out. And family, I will see you in a couple of minutes. Well, let's say about an hour. We're gonna do our toast. We're gonna do our toast and we're gonna have a little talk because family, we got to have some real talk. Because I want to thank all those that are supporting out there. But family, there was a specific reason. And I am so pissed right now that we could not air this the way that it should have been. But I want to thank all of you that came out and supported and posted up the questions. And also now y'all know y'all got a new link in Atlanta of a scientist, of a doctor that you could possibly send some of your questions to, especially when you see stuff on the internet that just ain't right, because we got a lot of weekend experts that come out and it's spouting shit that is not healthy for our community. Excuse me, baby. I know, I know she heard me cuss, but all right.
All right.
But all right, but we up. So with that, I say peace. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.